Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. Do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
And Jim Waters.
And welcome everybody to Kentucky's Voice. Of course, it's Wednesday. That means you've got the one, the only, Andrew Cooprider here as your host. And I know you all are very excited, and you should be, because I'm fired up today. I know I'm always fired up. Some of you listen, you're like, Andrew, you're always fired up. What's changed? Well, today I'm particularly fired up. My wife will tell you, I've been yelling about this all day, yelling about how awful this is for the last 24 hours, because yesterday I made a post about Churchill Downs, because they just got a 30-year property tax holiday. That's right. As things stand right now, assuming it doesn't get extended again, because this was an extension of a tax holiday that started, in 2003, I think? 2, 1? I don't know. I've got it wrote down somewhere. We'll go over it. Anyways, point is that this has now been going on for over 20 years, and they just got another 30-year extension till 2055 that Churchill Downs will not have to pay property tax at a time where everybody else is struggling, at a time where everybody here is being crushed by taxes, especially property taxes here in Louisville, at a time where people's property taxes exceed, especially those who are elderly, are that of a mortgage payment or 2 or 3 a year. At a time where that's going on, they say, you know what? We're going to give a tax break to this multi-billion-dollar company, one of the ones that's honestly most stuck here due to all the legislation and things they've done. I'll break it down for you, but I'm fired up about it. And I'm not just fired up because it happened, but I'm fired up that there's people who defend it. And maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I'm one of those people. I don't see what the big deal is, Coop. I think you're just getting a little upset there, Cooprider. I think you're upset about nothing. You're yelling. Somebody called me a Democrat. They said you're acting a lot like a Democrat. They called me that online for being upset about this. And that's part of why I'm fired up, because I got something to say. And so if you're one of those people, you better be listening. Now, if you want to join into the show, you've got comments to make as I go through this. Well, you can shoot us over a text at 502-571-0970. That's right. Shoot us a text with your questions or comments, 502-571-0970. Because as I break down this story, break down the history here, break down what people were defending, I hope you just get as fired up as I am. Because it is absolutely ridiculous. I don't even know if I'm going to have time for any other stories other than this Churchill Downs story, because it's such a slap in the face. And it makes no sense. And some of you are sitting there, I know, economic development, jobs, taxes, we'll talk about it. And you know what? If taxes are too much, I'm probably going to say this a few times today, but if taxes are too much for Churchill Downs to be able to handle, if Churchill Downs needs a special carve-out to survive, if Churchill Downs needs to not pay their property taxes in order to provide more jobs, what do you think it says about the financial state of the rest of us? Maybe perhaps we should be lowering taxes for everybody. But, we'll dig into it. We'll talk about it. I get fired up on these things. For those who follow me on social media, you can go ahead and do that. It's at KY Cooprider on X, and then on Facebook, just search Andrew Cooprider. I'll be honest with you. Those who follow me know there's a lot of action that happens on my social media. I mean, my posts on average get hundreds and hundreds of comments, and most of the time I don't read them, but I've read these and I'm mad about it. I'm so mad. And now, granted, out of the 400 some odd comments on the post, only probably about 50 of them are defending it. The other 350 see this as a ridiculous thing that it is, but still, it fires me up every time. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And I know you're going to want to join in this conversation because we're talking about Louisville. We're talking about not just Republicans and Democrats, but bipartisan corruption today. So if you want to jump in, 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970 to hop into the conversation. Fired up. Churchill Downs, 30-year property tax holiday. That's what we'll be talking about for most of today. Here on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooprider. If you like what you're hearing and you want to hear more of what I have to say, well, you can check out the Andrew Cooprider Show. Once again, that's the Andrew Cooprider Show. It's right here on WGTK, Sundays at 6 p.m. You can also watch it on WBNA Wednesdays at 11. And if you can't listen to it those times, you can always head over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. See all the places where you can tune into that. That's separate from what I do here every Wednesday at 11 here on Kentucky's Voice. But that's just, if you like what I'm saying. But digging into it now, we're talking about Churchill Downs once again. And if you want to join into the conversation, 502-571-0970. That's our text line for you. The Andrew Cooprider text line. It's not sponsored yet, so I'm sponsoring it for me. It's my name now. The Andrew Cooprider text line, 502-571-0970. I'm going to demand all the other hosts call it that from now on. The Andrew Cooprider text line. Okay. 502-571-0970. So what happened? Well, here recently, the Louisville Metro Council voted to give Churchill Downs a 30-year property tax holiday. That's until 2055. Okay, and I made a post about this on social media. I'm going to read to you what the post said. All right. So it says, while Louisville families and small businesses drown in skyrocketing property taxes, the billion-dollar gambling giant won't pay a dime. Last week, Metro Council voted to extend Churchill Downs tax exemption and greenlit a $1.2 billion in industrial revenue bonds for the company. This isn't economic development, it's legalized corruption. Churchill Downs posted record revenue of $2.7 billion last year and had a net income of $426.8 million last year. Let me say that again. On $2.7 billion in revenue, they had a net income of $426.8 million. That is astronomically high margins, by the way. Point is, they're not hurt. That wasn't in the post. That's just me realizing that is super high margins. I mean, Walmart's doing good if they're making a 1-2% profit. They're over here making like a 20% profit. Anyways, they're not hurting. They're not going anywhere. The Kentucky Derby alone guarantees that, and thanks to the 2023 sports betting law that requires every mobile app, such as FanDuel, DraftKings, etc., to partner with a Kentucky racetrack, Churchill Downs now controls roughly 45% of the state's online sports betting market. Kentucky's government has spent years rigging the system to keep Churchill Downs fat and happy. The least they could do is make the company pay the same taxes as the corner store or family living next door. If property taxes are too crushing for a corporation raking in $427 million in profit, imagine what they're doing to everyone else. Maybe it's time to lower taxes for all of us, not just hand sweetheart deals to connected insiders. The only way Churchill's Downs and the government seems to win is when the rest of us lose. And I do want to frame that in here. You know, look, I'm not sitting here saying gambling should be made illegal. I don't have a particular issue per se with gambling. But I think there's something particularly perverse when we're cutting deals and economic development deals and going out of our way to help out a group that literally makes money off every one of their customers being a whole bunch of losers. Literally, they make money off losers. It's their business model. They make money off Kentucky's losers. I'm just saying. But anyways, but I want to break down, because before I go into the defense people have of Churchill Downs, because for some reason they feel really bad for the company making $426 million a year, and they need to defend the fact that, you know, they don't have to pay the crushing taxes that the rest of us pay. And to be clear, I'm not even saying they should have to pay a whole bunch of taxes. What I'm saying is maybe the rest of us could get a break too. Maybe before the company that literally has a legally enforced monopoly created by the state gets their tax break, maybe we could get ours. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, let me break it down here. So what happened here? So Churchill Downs gained this 30-year property tax exemption. It deals with an older deal. So I think you got to rewind in the Kentucky horse racing industry to the 2000s, the 90s into the 2000s. It was struggling within Kentucky itself. And so when Churchill Downs first received its property tax exemption, it was in 2002. And what happened here? So the company owned the land that it sits on. It right now sits on 148 acres or so, 47, I think. But anyways, it owned the land it sat on. But it wanted to go ahead without throwing off its debt to income, leave itself a little more financially liquid, give itself the ability, though, to expand here. It gave the land to Louisville Metro government, to Louisville, to own, and then they lease it back to Churchill Downs for $1. And the reason why they did this was so that way the city could issue what's called industrial revenue bonds on their behalf. Basically, it's a way of going ahead and financing your expansions using interest rates that are far, far lower than what you would pay for a loan, and is paid back out of the revenues of the business. And also is something that is not considered a typical part of your debt to income. It's just how it works. But it's a highly desirable way of financing things. That's why they gave the land to Louisville. Then they lease it back to him for $1. Now, defenders of this idea would say, well, Louisville owns the land. They can't property tax their own land. Listen, there is a reason. There's a reason why the Metro Council had to vote in the first place. Because it is typical for commercial leases. If you go out there and you're a commercial business and you lease a property, you know what I'm talking about here. Okay, we're talking about triple net leases where you've got CAM, you got rent, CAM, and then you also have a line item for property tax. And in those leases, and this is a common, I would say the most common commercial lease, is that your actual rent changes every year, because when property taxes go up, your rent directly goes up. Like, property tax is a line item in your monthly payment. So yes, it is typical for if you are leasing a piece of property, regardless of the fact that they're getting the property for $1, because in actuality, the city really kind of owns the land, but not really. It was done for these IRB bonds, or IRB, that's the industrial revenue bonds. That's, IRB bonds is repetitive. But anyways, to get industrial revenue bonds, yeah, I get it. The city kind of owns it. Why have the city tax themselves? But it was all, it's all done so that way Churchill Downs can go ahead and, well, avoid taxes and also get sweetheart financing deals. Now, in the 90s and 2000s, gambling was struggling in Kentucky. That is true. And there's a mindset that until about 2010, where the mindset was that these entities are really failing and hurting. In fact, let's see here. In 2001, Churchill Downs' handle, the amount wagered, fell 10% from the 1997 peak. So in 1997, they peaked with the amount people are gambling. Come 2001, it's fallen a full 10%. And there's all kinds of issues going on. And so legislators across the state, and I think this is a kind of an old-timey thought, said, oh no, this key industry for us is going under. We have got to do something. We've got to fix something. And so these sweetheart deals started being made in the 2000s. Then comes 2010, and something changes there. And that is that these gambling locations that were betting on horse racing end up becoming illegal gambling dens to make ends meet. And you may say, Andrew, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Illegal gambling dens. Literally, from 2010 till 2020, the horse racing tracks in Kentucky engaged in a type of gambling that was illegal. The Supreme Court ruled it was illegal. You can't be doing that. The law was never passed to allow it. And what was this? Well, it was historical horse racing. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, and I'm going to tie in a bunch of other things, is to make my overall point about why this tax handout to Churchill Downs is especially egregious to me. Because there is not another industry, another company here in Kentucky that we have done more for in order to ensure that they continue to make billions in revenue and hundreds of millions of profit without actually providing like it's not like they're producing a product either here. They're producing losers. And there's not, we have put small businesses out of business for them. We have created monopolies for them. We've protected their revenue streams. And yet, when somebody brings up the fact that they're not paying their fair share in property taxes, whatever that means, maybe the rest of us should pay less, but when somebody brings it up, oh no, we got to defend it. We got to defend it. So we'll talk about this history of legislation when we come back here in just a second.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooper-Ryder. So we're talking about this 30-year property tax holiday Churchill Downs got. And I'm more talking about the political side of it. I mean, we're digging through the story overall. Obviously, if you want to jump into the conversation, go ahead and shoot us over a text. You can text us at 502 571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Got a few texts in over the break. I think one of you I'm going to end up wrapping around to what you brought up anyways here. But in this final segment, I'll go over that. And look, I get Churchill Downs side of things. Like, get it while you get it. I mean, you're just doing business. Yeah, it's capitalism. It's crony capitalism. But it's capitalism. And whose fault is it that this capitalism goes on? Is it the business's fault that crony capitalism goes on? No, they're literally being motivated by the exact things all of us would be. If I was in charge of Churchill Downs, I'd be doing the same thing they're doing. Get it while you can. But the point is on the government side of things. So gambling struggling in Kentucky. Come 2010, they start doing something called historical horse racing, which is essentially slot machines. I'm not going to go too much into the science of how it's pari-mutuel and how you're really gambling on historic horse races and you're picking winners and how it's all going into a pot and you're not necessarily betting against set odds per se like you would on a typical slot machine and how somehow that makes it different. It's a slot machine. What's going on behind the scenes, an operating system may be different, but it operates like a slot machine does. And so from 2010 to 2020, all these horse tracks are engaging in historical horse racing. But a law was never passed to allow slot machines in Kentucky. What happened here was the Horse Racing Commission decided to interpret an existing regulation to allow the slot machines to operate in the first place. Then, after 10 years of operating and making sure too, because this goes into why gray machines end up getting banned, but making sure that they paid the taxes that they would, like the taxes they pay on horse gambling, they're paying the same amount at the same rate of taxes on the historical horse racing. So they're making sure that the government's getting that thing that government can't turn down, like a drug addict to drugs, right to that needle, injecting them with that sweet, sweet tax money. That's right. They were paying the government millions in tax dollars from this operation. So the government's kind of like, well, maybe we don't have such a problem with it. But outside groups filed these lawsuits about how it is illegal. And in 2020, the Supreme Court agreed. So come 2021, keep in mind what's going on at this time. We got COVID, we got lockdowns, Bashir out of control. We still have businesses in this state that can't get their licenses back, that were taken away for staying open and operating and fighting against these out of control mandate lockdowns that happened in Kentucky. We still have businesses in that position. That being said, one of the top priorities there was to get past would be, Senate Bill 120, which legalized and changed the law. So the Supreme Court rules this gambling's illegal. You've been operating illegal gambling dens for 10 years. And the legislature says, okay, we'll just pass a law now and make them legal. We can't give up all this tax money we're making. So we'll just make it legal for them. So the horse industry, the gambling industry, the Churchill Downs industry is not struggling at this point since 2010, 2011, and they've been able to find other avenues. Before that, they did have to diversify. I mean, Churchill Downs was buying things outside of Kentucky in order to subsidize their Kentucky losses. For an example, they bought a chain of video poker machines that were in truck stops. They bought a horse track down in Florida. They're doing things to help subsidize their losses here in Kentucky to kind of keep it going. And I understand that thought process. But come 2020, that problem's mostly resolved. However, that's not all the legislature has done to go ahead and help them survive. Come 2023, they did two things for them. First, they legalized sports betting. And the way sports betting was legalized in Kentucky is that all these ads you get, the FanDuel, the BetMGM, the DraftKings, all the sports books that you bet. You know, I think ESPN probably has one. They have to operate through a horse track. So you have to physically have a licensed gambling horse track. And then what happens here is these apps give a cut of what they make to the horse tracks to just simply use their name. Literally, Churchill Downs, none of these racetracks had to invest in app development. They literally just pinned deals with these places that wanted to operate here in Kentucky offering sports betting. They just pin a deal with them and they make, a cut of the money. And out of all the sports betting that goes on in Kentucky, because of how many tracks and the positioning of Churchill Downs, 45% of all sports betting happening in Kentucky is being run through Churchill Downs or one of their tracks that they own. Then, as if that wasn't enough, so you legalize slot machines that otherwise were illegal. You run sports betting only through the horse tracks so they can continue to make money off that. Then, on top of that, gray machines come about. Those are those skilled games and gas stations that were in a gray area. Were they legal? Were they not? Well, the legislature takes a vote to ban them. Why? Because the horse tracks wanted them to. They were competing with them. They didn't like it. In fact, moves have been made against charitable bingo. Charitable bingo. Because they believe at the horse tracks, at these gambling slot machine places, that they are taking away their business. And so the legislature, the same year they legalized sports betting on your phone, they take out gray machines. Their excuse for that is, well, it's just too pervasive. People can just go around the corner to the gas station and gamble. We can't have that. They're not paying their taxes like other people are. We can't have that. Well, instead of creating a taxing structure for them, instead they ban it. Well, people are going around the corners destroying families. But you know what we'll pass too? We'll also pass the ability to gamble on your phone. The corner store, that's too easy for you to gamble at. An app on your phone, that, on the other hand, completely acceptable. So they've gone out of their way. They're carving out these businesses, carving out a way for them to survive. They can't leave. That's my point. Because one of the arguments, and that's where I didn't call this economic development, it's just sheer corruption. Because economic development would mean you're saying that if we don't do this, a business is going to leave. If we don't do this, a business is going to, not come into Kentucky. And we can argue over whether or not we should be cutting those deals or not. I understand as a nation, we'd like to stop cutting those deals, that government's picking and choosing winners and losers. I also understand the reality of the situation as a state is that we have to cut these deals in order to get these businesses in here, though I do have more to say on those deals here in a bit. I will be talking about that here in a bit, about how do we make decisions on the deals we're going to do. But putting that to the side, Churchill Downs ain't leaving. They have a government-enforced monopoly on sports betting. Basically, they have 45% of the market. They're protected on that. They have HHR gambling here that they have a monopoly on, basically. The horse industry does. I mean, there's only, 6, 7 horse tracks in Kentucky, and Churchill Downs owns half of them. They're not leaving. What are they going to do? Leave the Kentucky Derby? We'll be talking more about the arguments people have to support this tax holiday. Churchill Downs is getting 30 years property tax holiday. When we come back, if you want to join into the conversation, it's 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. We'll be back in a few short minutes. And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice, your host of the day, Andrew Cooper Ryder. So we're talking about this Churchill Downs getting a 30-year property tax holiday. Now I have to pay property taxes 30 years. And I was kind of laying out how silly and ridiculous this is. You can text in if you want to join in the conversation, 502-571-0970. Get your text in over the next 12, 15 minutes or so, because in the final segment is when I do respond to those text messages. So if you want me to respond to them, once again, it's 502-571-0970. Digging back into it, though. So everything I laid out. And I guess that's my point about why this hurts a little bit more than a typical economic development deal. Because we have already done so much for Churchill Downs at the state and local levels to put them in a position where they're literally making over $400 million a year in net profits. They are making record profits because of the things we have done over the last 5 years for them. This isn't the early 2000s anymore. Churchill Downs isn't losing money in Kentucky anymore. But yet we're still cutting them this deal. And how do people defend this? I think that's what's really, really, really a key in thing. So some of the defenses I heard about why this is needed, why we have to do this, is because, well, you know, Churchill Downs, this is a real thing. They said Churchill Downs may, you know, leave. Somebody said that. What do you want? They'll take their jobs elsewhere. They're not going to hold the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. Where are they taking the Kentucky Derby to? Somebody literally said that, well, if they don't get this deal, they may not push the Kentucky Derby as hard as they do every year. And then, of course, you know, the local businesses wouldn't make as much money. So they do so much for Louisville that they have to get the special tax, or else they may not push the Kentucky Derby a whole lot. And then, you know, that would hurt us. Churchill Downs makes money off the Kentucky Derby. Why wouldn't they push it? Like, that doesn't make sense at all. You're like, well, just to spite us, they're going to be like, you know what? You didn't give me my couple $1 million a year tax break that I wanted. Therefore, I'm not going to make money anymore. That'll show you. Because here's my point when it comes to economic development in this state, is there's no rhyme or reason. One of the defenses, a comment from somebody was that, you know, the government knows what, this is really what they said. They said the government knows what it's doing when it comes to economic development, and the Kentucky government's doing a fantastic job on it. They literally have no clue what they're doing. There is no rhyme or reason to anything that they do. Explain this to me. You've got the data center going in here in Louisville, lifting up what your electricity bills are, increasing them. I was reading things saying as much as 20% for a data center, getting a 50-year sales tax exemption. For what? For what? How many jobs does that create? And I'm not talking about construction jobs. So often they'll be like, well, look at these great construction jobs are created. Construction jobs. Construction jobs are nothing. Most of the time, they're not Kentuckians. They're coming in from out of state. A lot of times, it's illegal labor. And they're temporary. You can't build a budget. You can't build a government. You can't build an economy off construction jobs. That's cheap garbage. Well, you know, construction jobs, get that garbage out of construction jobs. If another politician quotes construction jobs as a reason to give a multi-billion corporation millions of dollars in tax breaks while your small mom and pop shop fails, I am going to lose my mind. Construction jobs. You know, one of the things too, I was on Twitter. One of the Metro councilmen started jumping into the fray. He decided he wanted to join into the conversation and justify his vote. It was councilman here, Anthony Piagentini. I should know how to say his name. I've just always called him Councilman Anthony. Anyways, he comes in to defend his vote. And he tried to claim This was his defense. This is what you're going to hear from the council people. They're going to say that what they offered Churchill Downs was a tax incentive that was roughly $750,000 a year, claiming permanent jobs alone will bring almost $2 million a year in occupational taxes. Construction jobs, there's that garbage again. Construction jobs will bring in over $3.5 million in taxes. This is known direct taxation alone. So let me ask you all a question. Is the deal that if you're a private business owner and the amount that you pay in occupational taxes exceeds the amount you pay in property taxes, you now don't have to pay your property taxes in Louisville. Is that a deal open to all business owners? Because I don't know if the councilman's aware, but almost every business that owns a building in Louisville is paying more in payroll tax and occupational tax than they're paying in property taxes. Is the councilman aware of that? His justification for this tax break alone could be used if you're not going to pick and choose winners and losers, if you're going to make the same offer to everyone, then that would mean that you would basically make a no property tax on commercial businesses. Almost all of them pay more in occupational tax than they pay in property taxes. But that is not an offer made to them, Anthony. You don't give that to them. If you've got your opinions, you can text them in 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. But also, let's talk about the $750 whatever. Because another thing people cite is that they make pilot payments, payment in lieu of taxes, P-I-L-O-T, pilot payments. And that stands for payment in lieu of taxes. And they give JCPS $1 million. And they say, well, that's what, they would have paid JCPS anyways in property taxes. And so therefore, we're just cutting them $750,000 and then they pay $1 million to JCPS. It's just a small little break. No big deal. Here's the thing. And also, if it's such a small little break, that's no big deal. Why do you have to give it to them? But here's the thing they won't bring up. And this is why that argument is disingenuous. Is because Churchill Downs also cut a special deal that their property evaluation will not exceed a certain level. I believe right now it's right around $120 million is what they say it's worth. That's all they can be taxed on value-wise. The land alone, 140 some odd acres in Louisville of commercially zoned land is worth 30 to 40 million. That's just the land. Over the last 5-6 years, they've done right around $300 to $400 million in expansion and construction work to the place. So you're going to sit here and tell me that a building that just in improvements has done $300 million, a property, and just improvements that's done $300 million over the past few years, that the land alone is worth $30, $40 million, is only worth $120 million? No, of course not. We know it's not. They just approved a $1.2 billion industrial revenue bond. We know that if the property was a fair market pricing on the property, it'd probably be $600,000-$700,000 at least. Or not $1,000, $600-$700 million at least. Assuming that all of the $1.2 billion they're just now putting into it and the $300-$500 million or so in improvements they've made just over the past few years, that's not the building that's already standing. Assuming that not 100% of it goes into property value. Do you think 120 million is accurate? No, but that's the game they'll play. They'll set that rate. They'll use that specially set rate to claim, well, it's only this low, when really it's 5 times that. And so when you look at it like that, actually the tax handout to Churchill Downs is far more than in payroll taxes that they're generating. The tax handout is more like $3 million a year. Plus, when you consider that they only give $1 million a year to the schools, that otherwise they'd give another $2-3 million a year to them, you're talking about them paying $1 million a year in a pilot payment instead of what should be probably $4 million, $5 million a year. Now, I know the councilman may not be good at math. Maybe he is. But that's $3-4 million a year in tax savings they're getting in order to produce, according to his own numbers, $2 million a year in payroll tax income. Does that math for anybody else? Does that sound like a net win for Louisville to you? I mean, if we're handing out, this is the thing. We hand out these tax benefits to all these companies that we're afraid, well, they'll leave. They'll leave if we don't do it. We have to do it. We have to basically make no money off this business or otherwise they're going to leave. So, that's what we have to do. But at no point, this is a completely, they're not leaving. And it's very clear they do not sit here and do any kind of math on this. When you're handing out a 50-year sales tax exemption to a data center here in Louisville, are you doing any kind of math on how much tax giveaway you're giving them compared to how much you're quote-unquote making? And then are you offering those same deals to every other person in your economy there? Maybe you want to jump into this conversation. Well, you can text 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Shoot us a text. Next segment here, I'll be going through those texts, answering them. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Send me over your opinions. I'm riled up. I'm fired up. I might respond to them. Hopefully they're good. Send me your opinions. All right, we'll be back in a few short minutes.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
And you're back here on this final segment of Kentucky's Voice. I'm going through your text. So far today, I've been talking about Churchill Downs getting this 30-year property tax holiday from the city of Louisville. Basically, they're not going to pay property taxes like you or I would for 30 years. Sounds nice. Sign me up. Where was I when they were handing out these free passes? So I've been digging through that all day here, or so far this hour, and I've got some text to go through, but you still have time if you want to jump in real quick to the conversation, get put to the bottom of the queue here. You can text 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. 0970. So if tax here, and I did mention this, they sent it a little bit earlier on in the show. They said, how about the 50-year tax abatement to the Campground Road mega 400 gigawatt data center? Plus, we as LGE ratepayers get to pay for their service transformer and switchyard for the power hook to the grid. No notice, no talking first, electricity rate will rise. Who has the authority to implement a utility tax in Jefferson County? How about a referendum vote? So here's the deal. First off, and I hit upon this earlier, these I do not understand the government's desire at all to incentivize these data centers. Like if you're a complete free market, libertarian, conservative individual, you might say, well, I don't want to get in the way of free enterprise. But at the same time, you can also not incentivize it. I mean, we're doing the same thing too with you're going to see that this session on nuclear energy, where we're going to clear the way and allow a nuclear power plant to come here in Kentucky, or they're going to try to in the legislature. And I'm not sitting here saying oh, you should, we can debate nuclear, clean energy, not clean energy, whatever. That's a greater debate. The point is you don't have to clear the way, though, for a power plant to come in that literally will kill jobs in Kentucky. I mean, you'll kill coal jobs. I mean, I believe nuclear power plants use about the same amount of employees as a coal-fired power plant would, but then they also don't have coal. And so does it kill jobs in Kentucky? What's the trade-off here? That's part of the conversation about incentivizing things that really don't add anything to Kentucky. However, when it comes to your rates are set. Obviously, there's a board that has to approve any rate hikes as far as it goes, because the government has once again given a monopoly to one power company to operate in your area. Long history on how that happened, but basically. So they do have to go through the government to do that. Now, if your rate's getting hiked by the power company, you can't referendum it. If your rate's getting hiked by a taxing district, such as, I know that Jefferson County Public Schools is considering a utility tax, but that up to a certain level can be referendumed. If they exceed beyond a certain level. So, but in large part, no, there's nothing you can do about it except grin and bear it. Somebody else sent in, nobody helped my mom when her taxes went up $600 on her property this year. What? Your mom didn't call up one of these council members like Councilman Anthony and ask them for property tax holiday for the next 30 years? They didn't offer that to her? She didn't point out how much, in payroll tax she's paid to the city over the years, and how much her kids pay, and how much the fact that this house existing keeps her kids in the area to continue to pay taxes. And then if she can't afford the house anymore and has to move, perhaps her kids move too so they can be closer to her. So therefore, the tax benefit to her staying there is much higher than that $600. She didn't make that argument and they didn't approve it, huh? I'm just shocked. I'm shocked. Did she try engaging in a gambling business? Did she try perhaps selling them on a new startup she had that would take the losers of Kentucky, definitionally, lose at betting, losers of Kentucky, and then suck them dry more? Did she try that? Because they like that here in Louisville. That's what I heard. Anyways, here's another one. Churchill Downs paid $500,000 to the FOP lodges of Kentucky to not lobby for the machines to be legalized, we took it and stayed out of the fight. So what they're saying here, I believe, it's hard to know what machines they're talking about. So during this episode, I've talked about two kinds of machines, historical horse racing machines and gray machines. So of course, the horse tracks, Churchill Downs, lobbied for HHR to be legalized in 2020. But then they lobbied for gray machines to be made illegal in 2023. At the same time, they're lobbying for sports betting to be run through them. And they got all their wish list. Check, check, check. And so if you're talking about, regardless, what this person's claiming, though, is that FOP, the police, would obviously have an opinion on perhaps the gambling in an area because, it drives calls to an area. It drives a certain crowd sometimes. Slot machines do. And so obviously they would have some thoughts about it. And so Churchill Downs gave $500,000 to these lodges, this is what this texter's claiming, to not lobby on anything. Just not even to lobby for or against, but just don't say anything. Here's $500,000. Just don't lobby on this here. We need to watch the bottom line. And that tells you something. I mean, this is how they all operate, that it's worth it to them. They look at it and they say $500,000 to get rid of gray machines, worth it. $500,000 so I can keep HHR going, worth it. 100% worth it. That's their business model, and it works for them. Another person commented, on top of all that, hardly any tickets are available to Louisville residents for the Derby, completely unaffordable for most people. That's the last text I got in. If you want to shoot in your text real quick, we've got like another 5 minutes here. You can get it over real quick. 502-571-0970. Tickets are obviously unaffordable, right? It's like the Super Bowl. Tickets are unaffordable to like everybody who lives near Churchill Downs and they have to deal with all the ramifications of Churchill Downs and they can't even enjoy it. But who could, I guarantee you, this year, who's going to have tickets? Those city council members. I guarantee you, Churchill Downs offers probably, I think I know this to be true, but probably offers every councilman, every mayor, every state legislator tickets to the Derby. As long as you keep that sweet, sweet taxpayer cash flowing, as long as you keep those sweet, sweet monopolies in place, as long as we and just a few others continue to be the only ones who can profit off Kentucky's losers, you're allowed to come. Come be a part of the pomp and circumstance of the Derby for free. You won't even have to really pay for it. So there you go. So there's the text messages sent in. It's truly a frustrating and upsetting a situation to me. I'm very upset about it. I think you guys are too. Because there is no, going back to the economic development, there is, no rhyme or reason at all to what our legislature does when it comes to things. I mean, let's think about this for a second. Or the governor, because a lot of times the governor's making these choices too. But you have electric vehicles. So they say, well, we're going to heavily push electric vehicles. We're going to get in on that. And I guess in their minds, they view that as, a handout, or they view that as an opportunity into the current car industry. But really, electric vehicles are its own industry. Somebody texted in, who gave the school board the authority to make a utility tax? The state legislature did. Somebody asked, who gave the school board the authority to make up a utility tax? The state legislature did. They love giving tons of issues. There's tons of different abilities for people to raise their money. So anyways, and so when you look at it, when they gave, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've given $410 million in straight cash to electric vehicle plants. One of those being $110 million to a plant down in Bowling Green area, AESC. Now, at the time that they gave that money, Bashir claimed that it was a Japanese company, ignoring the fact that about 5 years prior to that statement by him, AESC was sold to China. It was told it was majority held by China and linked to the CCP. So really, we gave $110 million to a CCP-backed Chinese company, but money well spent. And that has since struggled. It struggled to get off the ground. It was supposed to, I believe, recycle car batteries. Was their whole business model, but it's struggling a lot. I've done some research into that. I've really dug into that, and it's laying off, or it's priorly laid off a lot of construction workers, site workers, as far as that goes, slow down construction. It's unclear if they're going to hit their numbers or not, or have to declare bankruptcy here in America. There's been a lot of stories ran. You can find one in the New York Times about them. New York Times wrote an article about how construction has stopped, and largely they're blaming Trump, but still, I mean, across the board, it's something that hurts. But it wasn't like a for sure industry the same way car manufacturing was. But Bashir was the one who made this decision. Didn't really see it that way. I mean, it's the same thing as like just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, our major exports, aeronautical, cars, obviously alcohol. And that's like it. We've got some other ones that are pretty huge, but aerospace is like our number one export. But when you look at like what we're financially incentivizing, it's literally all over the place. If we look at, so if you go to, I've got about a minute left. If you go to fiscal incentives search, it's FIS or fisearch.ced.ky.gov. You can see all the financial incentives that we're giving out over the last, period of time. And and you can put in any kind of period of time. So if I want to say, hey, since last month, how many financial incentives have we put out? And you can look at all the different programs, cash programs, IRB programs. You can look county by county, and you'll see. And when you go through the list, you'll start to see some things that just like make no sense. Service and technology, tourism, manufacturing, to put a headquarters here, energy. It's all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason at all. So there you go for you. Well, that's what we got time for today on Kentucky's Voice. Thank you all so much for joining me. See you guys back here next week. Hope you have a great rest of your day.